back to the channel. I am your host, God of Heroics, and today we are, well, we, yeah, I certainly can't hear myself. Boop, boop. My bad, start over. Anyway, hello everybody, and welcome back to the channel. I am your host, God of Heroics, and today we are finishing our talk about Jujutsu Kaisen, at least for now. I know we're going to bring it back at some point because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this franchise, but you'd probably be looking at this and wondering, why are we talking about curse techniques? Why did you pull up the list of curse techniques? We already talked about curse techniques. That is true, but I want to do something that we talked about prior, and I want to talk about all of the curse techniques. There are a lot of them, so just know we are going to go through this list. It's probably going to be the longest JJK video I'll probably ever put out. And that's not saying much considering that I think the longest video is just a little over an hour. So anyway, we're gonna really jump into this. So the plan for today, we're gonna go over just the basics of curse techniques and what they are, and the innate and inherited techniques. We're going to look at what they all are, and I'm just going to explain pretty much every curse technique to you and how they function, any weaknesses or whatnot, if that might be the case, or what their strengths are. And I want to do something a little fun. We're going to look at what lapse and reversal are, and subtraction. These are different variables when it comes to curse techniques, and we're gonna just kind of brainstorm what it would be like if these curse techniques were to apply these things. Anyway, go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the page, hit the notification bell if you like this kind of stuff, and please stay tuned until the very end because I do have something really fun planned for the very end, some really interesting news about content going forward. But without further ado, let's get started. So, curse techniques. Uh, Pretty much all sorcerers can put their cursed energy into these techniques, and everybody awakens a technique around the age of 5. Well, all sorcerers awaken their technique around the age of 5. In a sense, all the information from their technique is pretty much downloaded into their mind, essentially, and they know how their technique works, ins and outs, and they can then train to push the limits of said techniques and figure out more things that they can do with it, with things like binding vows and all that stuff. So, let's see. It says, so when it comes to curse techniques, there's two different variations. There's lapse and reversal. Lapse is just the basic version of your technique and how it's used. For example, we're going to use Gojo for these. Um, Gojo's Infinity, he has what is called lapse blue, and that's just using his Infinity to pull things in. Pretty much it's just, well, we'll get into what it is when we talk about it, but it's pulling things in. And then the reversal of that technique would be multiplying your negative energy by more negative energy, making positive energy, which in a sense reverses the technique, making it the opposite of the original or something of that nature, where it has an opposite effect, where Gojo has reversal red, which repels anything that gets hit by the concussive force, and then subtraction. So curse techniques require hand signs and empowering words, so pretty much just incantations to make them as strong as possible. This is the way to use your curse technique at its maximum strength, as far as just like your maximum power, not necessarily like the maximum output version, because Jogo has like a maximum output meteor. That's not what I mean. I just mean like in order to utilize it, it's much like casting a spell where there's incantations and hand signs that can be used to put it at its maximum power, but the sorcerers can shortcut that and just use their normal technique. It just won't be as strong, but you are definitely saving time. So, I'm not going to talk about how to utilize subtraction or what it should be like for each individual one, but we will be talking about the lapse and reversal version. And if I cannot come up with what a reversal version of a technique would look like, or imagine what it would look like, we will be making a maximum technique version of said techniques. So let's get started. First on the list is Nobara Kukusaki, whose ability is the straw doll technique. And this pretty much just allows her to utilize her hammer, nails, and different straw dolls to put her cursed energy into enemies pretty much. So she used the hammer to launch the nails. The nails are coated in cursed energy. It hits enemies, and then she can, from far range, and then she can pretty much just detonate those nails. And then she can also take parts of her enemies or something like super associated with them, much like their shirt or so like a broken off hand or something like that. And then she can nail a doll with that item, and the doll essentially would act as a representative stand-in for that person, and the damage would be done to them from pretty much any distance. um, a reversal version of this, if I had to really come up with one, I hate that I'm gonna say this because there's a technique later that this might apply to. But if I had to say like what a reversal version of the straw doll technique would be like taking weaker curses, like curses that are weaker, way weaker than her, or in a weakened state, and being able to like maybe it would turn them into a straw doll or like a voodoo doll version of themselves, and it would be very similar to Ghetto using his cursed manipulation. I can't really say what this would do. It'd be kind of cool if doing that would make them work for her, but it's a little hard to say what something like that would be. If not, then a maximum output version, probably hard to say because it feels like when she explodes them, that would be like the maximum version. Maybe it would change the size of the air of the nails, or a maximum version would like guide the nails to her, to the target like a homing attack. That would be pretty cool. And then she would be using like all of her nails on the one enemy. Like she would like pull out the whole clip of nails essentially and hit one time with the hammer, and it would launch all the nails, but they would like spread out and hit the enemies at different locations, like arms, back, head, stuff like that, like really pin cushion them and then explode. Then we have Sukuna's shrine technique. Really difficult to decide like what the more powerful versions or even a reversal version of this would be. Dismantle pretty much allows him to slice apart targets. It can be people or inanimate objects or other curses. And cleave is much more used for stronger opponents, where it naturally just adjusts the amount of curse energy needed to cut down a target if they're much tougher than a regular enemy. And he also does have Fuga, which is basically a fire arrow with a lot of explosive power. There could be a maximum output version of that, which would be like a fire version of Sasuke's Indra's arrow, which would be devastating. Probably not nearly as much like explosive power because Sasuke is a different beast. But yeah, he scales like way higher. But yeah, maybe a maximum output version of like a dismantle would be slight spoilers here, but in the Modulo manga, there's a two-page spread where Yuji is slicing pretty much everything around him, kind of like he's using Suguna's domain expansion, and he's hitting everything around him and just cubing everything, like dicing it and everything into like tiny, tiny little bits. And that would probably be like a maximum output version of something like this. He doesn't say maximum output or anything like that, but yeah. Next, we're going to talk about Jogo. He is one of the disaster curses, and his ability is pretty much he's the disaster of volcanoes, which allows him to manipulate lava, and he use pyrokinesis. I already have decided what I think a reversal version of his technique would be. The Labs version would obviously be like producing lava and fire and stuff like that. I think the Labs version would be like solidifying lava to seal enemies, and anybody weaker than him would have a really difficult time breaking out of that, or even just wouldn't be able to break out at all. He would just straight up Pompeii people, which I think would be really cool. And I had this idea because I watched The Legend of Korra, which we might end up talking about eventually. We might do a whole month where we talk about the Avatar franchise. But let me know if you want to do that, especially with the leaked movie. I haven't watched it, but I know that there's leaks for it. I might watch it if we do like a month of Avatar, and then we can just talk about stuff like that. But anyway, in The Legend of Korra, there's a character named Bolin who is an earthbender, and he unlocks an advanced version of earthbending called lava bending. And with bending styles, you know that you can change the temperature of what you're utilizing. Like Katara can use water bending, and then she can freeze it and make ice. For like ice needles, or like when she was shooting those ice pillar, when she knocked like made an ice pillar and was shooting like discs from it and stuff like that. She then, like, she could superheat it and make steam and stuff like that when she was like the Lady of the Mist in that one episode. And Bolin, who is lava bending, can obviously control Earth, and then he can heat it up to make lava, because lava is pretty much just melting point Earth, and then he could solidify the lava, thus, solidifying it and turning it back into like a cooled down lava version. I forget like the actual word for it, but I think that would be like a good reversal version of that. Hanami. Hanami's technique pretty much just allows him to create like plants and stuff. It says cursed plants and wood-based attacks. Plants, and then it says plants do not embrace cursed energy, so Hanami can absorb their life force and convert it. I feel like that is a reversal version of his technique. They don't directly say like, oh, cursed technique reversal, whatever, whatever. But I feel like because he manifests plants by putting cursed energy into them and then growing and manipulating them however he wants, that the ability to take life energy from plants and absorb it back into his body for energy, and to heal himself, pretty much, or heal herself, sorry, would be considered the reversal version of that technique. So a maximum output version, I can imagine it would be like a giant ass plant, like giant ass tree, kind of like the divine trees in Naruto, like in the war arc, that giant divine tree that Kaguya basically was summoned from with his black Zetsu, something like that. I think would be cool, and it would like produce tons of like vines and stuff to like grab enemies or hold them. It could shoot like leaves to cut the hell out of them, or it could like stab roots into them and absorb their life energy, or it can just produce heavy spores that are poisonous to the enemies, like spores just full of Hanami's cursed energy. To be honest, if it was something like that and it would do all of those things, pretty crazy. Nanami's ratio technique. Pretty much it just divides his enemies into sections that he can hit anywhere between the point of 2 and 7, or 7 to 2 rather. Um, and it does like critical damage, and that can be marking anywhere in their body, like their heads, arms, torsos, legs. That's what it says right here. Um, I think a maximum output version of this wouldn't just be like critical damage; it would be like dicing them, kind of like um the cleave and dismantle that we talked about with Sukuna. It would be cool if it could be like long range, where like a maximum output version would be like he, instead of placing it on them, he places it in his perspective, and whatever like mark he hits from like the 7 to 3, it would send a wave of damage that way, like a shock wave or like a cutting wave, like the cleaves and dismantles, and it would hit the opponents from a far range. That would make Nanami more versatile. Hanami's idle transfiguration pretty much allows him to grab somebody's soul essentially and warp the shape of it, thus warping the way they look and changing their appearance. Um, Honestly, the reverse of this would just be the opposite. Like, instead of warping the soul to look like something else, it would be like warping his own soul, or warping the souls from like monstrous things to back to being normal. Like he could change people into cursed creatures, or change, cursed spirits into people, stuff like that. Um, a maximum output version of this would be crazy. It would probably be something like, um, what's his name, Shigaraki, where he can touch the ground and create like cracks, like his decay cracks, and then anything or anyone that it touches also gets decayed. It would be interesting if he could like make a wave of idle transfiguration, where he touches the ground, and within like a certain distance from him, anybody touching the ground or touching the surface that he touches would get transformed into whatever he wants. Next is Momo Nishimiya. I love this character. I think she's really adorable. She's really cute, really sweet, very innocent little girl. But her technique is so dumb. I made a video like years ago, which I'll probably remake, where I was talking about people's curse techniques and how to make them better. So we're kind of just gonna do that here, rehash that. So it says that her curse technique is tool manipulation. I assume this is any and all tools, but it's kind of dumb that it's worded this way because this allows her. It said that it allows her to control her broom. Her broom is her tool, so she can use it to fly, shoot the bristles off her brooms, and create large gusts of wind. This is stupid as shit because it would be so much easier to just make her curse technique wind manipulation. Because one, nobody has wind manipulation in this series, and I don't know why. Um, we have we have the freaking we have three of like the Avatar characters, and then Mahito messes it up. So like the disaster curses would you have fire, earth, and water, but then you don't have air, or in this case it'd be wind with Momo. But anyway, it would be so much easier if instead of letting her manipulate curse tools or her specific tool, if she could just manipulate wind and she just chooses to fly on the broom, like she's manipulating the wind to make the broom fly, then one, um, the way Nobara defeated her wouldn't even freaking work because then she would find out in that moment, oh, your technique isn't, you're not using the broom to fly, you're flying but holding the broom. And that'd be a really cool aura farming mode moment for Momo. But also, then her broom could just be a regular curse tool, which is where like shooting the bristles, like it could have like infinite bristles, kind of like Cactuar doing like Thousand Needle in Final Fantasy, and it could like never run out of like bristles or something like that. Every time it shoots one, it just creates a new one magically. And then we can also make it so that like the broom just enhances her wind manipulation, where like swinging the broom and creating gusts of air would be more powerful utilizing the broom than just utilizing her curse technique of controlling wind. Anyway, we're going on to my Zenin and slight spoiler Yorozu. Um, her technique is called construction, which pretty much just allows her to create anything. Mai has really low curse energy because she's a twin with Maki, and it's not until she dies that she actually utilizes her ability for something actually good. But pretty much, she fights with a revolver and she uses her very, very little amount of curse energy to construct an extra bullet in her gun. So people think that she has a six shooter when in reality she has a seven shooter and it catches them off guard. Kind of smart for anyone who like is counting bullets, to be honest. Because like most people that she could fight on like a higher end would be more worried about dodging the bullets and disarming the gun rather than counting the bullets and being like, okay, now I can jump in. Like no. Anyway, it says Euros is able to recreate almost any substance that she recognizes except special grade curse tools. And that's where they differ because Mai was actually able to create a special grade curse tool when she made the soul split katana for Maki as she was dying. Um, oh, my bad. I didn't do a reversal or a maximum output for Momo. So maximum output would probably be like a natural disaster. So like you can make a tornado or as like a typhoon or something like that. Pretty easy stuff. Hurricanes. Well, I think a domain expansion as a hurricane would be pretty cool for her, and it would be barrierless. And the point for that would be so that the wind that's being whipped up not only does all the damage that it's going to do inside of her range, whatever it may be, like a 200-meter or whatever, kind of like Sukuna's, but also because it's wind, it's also disturbing things outside of the domain expansion. But it's just that her limited range is for sure hits rather than the collateral damage that happens outside of that, which in a sense would make her technique more dangerous than Sukuna. And then she could probably add a binding foul that because it's a hurricane that it can move, and that would be pretty interesting. Um, anyway, so my maximum output would just be creating bigger objects, so kind of like the soul split katana, or creating multiples of something, kind of like oh, this would be fun. Her domain expansion would actually be like I know Utah's looks more like it, but it would look like Unlimited Blade Works from the Fate series, where it's just a reality marble where inside she's just creating and conjuring tons of different weapons and stuff, and there'll be weapons all around that she can grab and fight with. Um, yeah, and then I think um a reversal version would be like deconstructing things. Momo's reversal would be like pulling things in with her tornado, kind of. That would probably be like the reversal version, or even just sucking air like towards her to pull her enemies. Easy stuff. And yeah, Mai's reversal version would be deconstruction, where she can touch things and like input her cursed energy into it and break it down into like its fundamental components or something like that. That'd be kind of cool. And then she could use reversal and the lapse version back to back to pretty much do alchemy, where she can break something down to its essential parts and then re like join its parts to make any other object. That'd be kind of cool. Toto, Boogie Woogie. Pretty much he claps, and anything that has cursed energy in it in his vicinity, he can swap with any other thing or person with cursed energy. Um, I don't know if there's a reversal version of this. Maximum output. I'm gonna skip this one. I'm gonna skip this one, not because I can't think of anything, but because um, it would be manga spoilers. um, but you'll see if you read the manga and you know what Toto does later, then you already know why I skipped the maximum output portion. But um if you haven't read the manga or you don't plan to, I'd say wait till season 4 or season 5 when he does the thing. Anyway, a domain expansion for Toto would be fun. I imagine it would be a concert, and it would be very similar to when he was fighting Mahito and he was visualizing the idol and she was helping him fight. I feel like it would be something like that, where Toto would essentially his boogie woogie technique would be transferred to the audience of the concert. So it will be him, his opponent or opponents on stage, and surrounding the stage would be the audience, and they would be cheering them on. The girl would be singing, I forget her name, but the idol girl would be singing, and the audience would be clapping to the beat of the song, and every clap can or cannot swap anything with cursed energy in it. And in that case, because there's cursed energy flowing throughout the entire domain expansion, it could be moving enemies to wherever he wants them to be moved to, swapping them with himself, swapping them with his friends, or just moving himself or his friends to a different location without having to swap them with any particular person because there's cursed energy everywhere. I think that would be pretty cool. Um, Moving on, Gakuganji. Gakuganji's technique uses his body as a sound amp device, amplifying the melodies he plays with his electric guitar, launching into the waves of cursed energy. Um, I don't know if this is damaging. Like, I guess pretty much he plays his guitar and his body emits sound waves. I know how he uses this in like the next season. I think it should be the next season, or if they plan to do a movie, then the movie after the next season. I'm not going to get into why that'd be a movie. If you don't know, you don't know. If you know, you know. Um, I think a domain expansion version of this would just be amping the sound even higher, where like the entire barrier is just a shit ton of speakers and he's playing the guitar, launching sound waves that get louder and louder and louder. And if you know anything about sound waves, louder sound can actually damage physical people. Like you can literally damage your body with sound waves. And with it being cursed energy, he's literally just bombarding your body with cursed energy, kind of like how Gojo pressed Hanami into the wall in season 2 with his infinity. I think that would be cool. um the maximum output version would just be that. You know that one meme where like the guy is sitting in that chair, leaned all the way back, and he has these giant ass speakers blasting him with music? I imagine it being something like that, where a maximum output version would like just play the sound waves in one direction, but at like an ungodly level of like of an ungodly level of volume. Then we get to Esom Kechizu, who are Choso and Yuji's other brothers that Yuji ended up killing at the end of season one. Sorry, Yuji and Nobara ended up killing at the end of season one. And they have scarlet rot essentially with their blood. And maximum output version of this would be kind of like, so basically their blood is poisonous to anyone. So a maximum output version would kind of be like when Choso let out a shit ton of blood and washed Naoya out of like the subway systems or the tunnel, whatever they ran. It would be like that. Um, like leaving out that much blood. And since they can manipulate that blood, they can kind of just like hit you from all directions or straight up drown you or solidify you within it to seal you. That'd be kind of crazy. I can't really think of what a domain expansion would be for that, but that's cool. A reversal version would require them to actually hit you though, because they would hit you, putting their blood into your body, and then the reversal version would be like yanking all of your blood out of your body because like they control their own blood, but if they expand their blood throughout your body, then they will be like the reversal version will be pulling your blood out of you, kind of. That'd be kind of cool. um Mekamaru, Kokichi Muta. I'm not calling him that ever again. Puppet manipulation though. Essentially, he just controls a shit ton of puppets. He's like Robot from Invincible, but he has tons of different other robots rather than just his regular ugly stupid ones. Uh, it's really hard to say. I know for a fact that domain expansion would be possible, and I feel like his domain expansion would drag his enemies. It would take the shape of like a lab, kind of like some crazy scientific lab, and much like some kind of horror movie made in the Lies of P universe or something, there would be these automatons just crawling out of like everywhere and swarming his enemies. And they would be like grabbing them, ripping them apart, blasting them, cutting them, stuff like that. And there's pretty much nothing he can do to get out of that. Um, Even like with breaking them, they would just reform, like instantly repair, kind of. That'd be interesting. And he would be utilizing like as much years of curse energy to kind of keep them standing if he really wanted to. And a maximum output version would probably just be utilizing all like his stocked up years to do like one crazy attack or whatever. Suguru Geto. Um, Gato obviously has cursed spirit manipulation. It allows him to pretty much eat the souls or cores of weaker curses and then turn them to his side where he can summon them and fight alongside them. We've already seen the maximum output version, Uzumaki. A domain expansion would probably be very similar or the pretty much the exact same thing as like Megumi's domain expansion, where he would like pretty much just be opening portals everywhere, summoning different beasts everywhere where they can hit his enemies and tag team them and all that shit. The only difference being he's not utilizing the shadows, like he can't swallow his enemies into shadows. But I feel like with something like this, he would probably have to live by like the Yuta law where he would have to use, I don't know, because his technique would be consuming and expelling cursed spirits. And I don't know if he would be able to apply a certain cursed spirits technique to his barrier because with Yuta, he copies multiple techniques so he can apply whichever one he wants. But it's not like Geto copies their techniques unless he uses maximum output Uzumaki, in which case he has all of their techniques and he can utilize each one of them only once, but at like max power. And if he does that, then he'd be able to apply any single one of those spirits techniques to his domain expansion, which actually make his domain very versatile because every time he uses it, he would have a different ability in his domain, which would be really fun. Um, Tengen. Tengen's ability is just immortality. She still ages, and the older she gets, or the physically older her body gets, the closer she gets to being a cursed spirit or being having the qualities of a cursed spirit. And because of this, they always get a star plasma vessel for her to pretty much become one with, so that it reverses the aging process. Um, a reversal version of this would probably be like siphoning like mortality from people. So like stealing the amount of like the amount of years they have left to live. That would be really interesting. Or if she could slow down the aging for certain people, I think that would be fun as well. But that much time has really given her the ability to master barrier techniques. Excuse me. Basque man curse user. I wow, that's funny. When I watched this, I thought I just missed his name, but he really doesn't have a name. So he can create a maximum amount of five clones, and he can change which body is like the real body, so he can avoid damage and stuff like that. Um, a reversal version, I can't think of what that would probably be like. Maybe like cloning his enemies. That'd be interesting. So, and it would be like a psychotic break where they don't know which of them is real. But I feel like that is just dumb. But a maximum output version would probably be like creating 4 times as many. So instead of 5 clones, it would be like 20 of them, and then they would jump you. That'd be interesting. A domain expansion for him would probably be like a House of Mirrors, where he's not just cloning himself, but his clone, but he would be like cloning his enemies as well, and they would never be able to tell like which is the real version of them or which is the real version of him. I think that would be an interesting way to utilize his technique. Kenjaku's innate technique allows him to transplant his brain into another person's body, taking over their body. He gains their memories and abilities pretty much. Innate techniques only, by the way. He gains their innate techniques, and when he moves on to a new body, he still has those abilities, which is why. Never mind, I can't say that because that's spoilers for the manga. Anyway, um, a reversal version for this would probably be kind of. I can't say that either. That's also spoiler for another character's abilities. But yeah, I can't think of what a reversal version of this. Taking over someone else's body, I assume like swapping people's bodies, like Freaky Friday type shit. That'd be kind of cool. Um, but again, there's another character that has the ability to do that, so I don't really know if that would count. And we also know that he has a maximum output. Well, we know he has a maximum output because he used it on his specific ability that he was using at the time, which was Ghettos. So I can't really say what a maximum output version of this would be. Maybe with the idea of like body hopping, he could be able to like expel his cursed energy into multiple bodies and then like kind of puppeteer them, but for a little bit of time, not necessarily too long. And then the little bit of time he has their bodies, he can get a grasp on their cursed techniques and how to use them. That'd be interesting. And then he has his own domain expansion. So Takuma Ino, his ability is called Auspicious Beast, and it's pretty much a seance ability that is a more advanced version of the 10 Shadows technique. So this is fun. So the 10 Shadows that Megami has, which we'll talk about in a little bit when we get there, it allows him to summon Shikigami, one of 10 different types of Shikigami, and then they all have their own abilities. Auspicious Beast has 4 specific beings, Kaichi, Reiki, Kirin, and Ryu. And these 4 beasts, instead of being summoned, they basically grant their abilities to Ino as long as he's wearing his like full face mask, his shiesty. Um, Kaichi is the one that had like a giant like hornet type needle or whatever. Um, I remember Kidding allows him to pretty much overload his body to where like he doesn't feel pain. It kind of like overloads his sensory perception. But the problem there is that once he's tired, he's like really tuckered out. Ryu lets him pretty much turn his arms into like giant dragons or whatever. Um, what does Reiki do? Let me take a look at it again. Um, oh, Reiki is a defensive technique. It lets him coat his body in water, and then he can like slide around. Well, he can use it to like block attacks, but then he can also use it to slide around and increase his mobility. Anyway, inverse was Jiro's ability. Basically, it allowed it so that when he's using it, weaker attacks do more damage, and heavy damaging attacks do little damage. Sorry, we skipped Eno's thing. A maximum output would probably be like using all four at the same time in like some weird way, like coated in Reiki's water, with his basic nervous system being pretty much fried, so no pain. Giant Kaichi hornet needles flying everywhere with dragon arms. Um, I can't think of what a reversal would be unless it'd be like using these without his mask. That'd be kind of interesting. Anyway, Jiro. A reversal version of this would be like applying his technique, but offensively. So, so like instead of, light attacks do a lot of damage to me, but heavy attacks do no damage. It would be like, oh, I do one really huge heavy attack to my opponent, and my opponent blocks it, but it does like no damage, and they're confused about it, but like it was just a fake out, so you can get a quick like jab or tap in, and the tap would do like maximum damage, like knocking them back pretty much. That'd be interesting. Ogami. She used a seance ability where she could bring deceased people and put them into another person's body, which essentially revived them for a little bit. But the person that she put it into, which was her grandson, essentially, what it was it? He would be able to control like his body with that person's abilities. Essentially, this didn't work with Toji because of his heavily restriction, but it is what it is. The reversal version of this would be like, I guess, putting it would be like taking somebody's soul and putting it onto whoever. So let's say like Yuji and Megami are fighting her grandson, and a reversal version would be like either putting her grandson's soul into Megami or vice versa. No, put her grandson's soul into Megami, and then he would be able to like operate with the Ten Shadows or something like that. Or well, yeah, I was right. Or vice versa. Put Megami into her grandson, and he'll be kind of, well, um, what's homegirl's name? Ino. It would be like Ino's ability, the mind transfer jutsu, pretty much. But she'd be putting her grandson's body, mind into someone else's body, or vice versa. Anyway, moving on. Mei Mei. Basically, she telepathically controls crows, and then the maximum, not it's not a maximum output technique, but she has an ability where they pretty much suicide bomb and explode. But she can like see anything and everything through their eyes. Maximum output version of this would probably be like utilizing all her crows at once or multiple crows to kind of just like bomb her enemies like one crow after the next in rapid succession. A domain expansion would probably be like infinite crows essentially, and that would be terrifying. Um, but yeah, that's just my thought process there. There's not really a reversal version of this that I can really think of. Dagon. Dagon is like Aquaman, pretty much, just creating shit tons of water and controlling sea life within that water. It can create more water than Maximum Elephant, which makes sense because Max Elephant is just a Shikigami with limited cursed energy, while Dagon is a cursed womb who seemingly has like unlimited cursed energy. Um, Pretty sure Dagon has his own. Well, he does. He has his own domain expansion, in um, which we saw in season two. Reversal version would probably be similar to like what I said with Eso and Kechizu, but he'd be like controlling water instead of conjuring water out of like nowhere. It would be like controlling water around him. So, like water in the air, he'd be able to snatch that and use it. Water in other people's bodies, control that and stuff like that. As long as they're weaker than him, because his curse energy would have to overwrite their body pretty much. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna grab some water. Anyway, our next person is Nanako. Nanako Hasaba, whose ability is basically deep fakes and Photoshop. Um, Her technique, which does not have a name, it pretty much allows her to manipulate anything or anyone in a photograph that she takes on her phone. And she used it on herself to change locations, but the process quickly exhausts her. So imagine like you take a selfie and you're like, hey, look where I am. And you change the background to the Eiffel Tower. And it's like, Boom, bitch. I made it all the way overseas. I mean, you'd be tired of shit because that's a lot of curse energy, but you get the point. You can also just like take a picture of somebody, use AI to make them naked, and now all of a sudden they're naked and like you have their nudes and stuff, which you know is what people do with deep fakes anyway. Or you can like take a picture of cheese and then in the photo editor, like you can just slice it into like cheese slices, and now you have sliced cheese instead of a big ass block of cheese. You know, stuff like that. Um, Mimiko Hasaba, who is her sister. Her ability, which also is unnamed, is pretty much just traditional voodoo. Um, so whatever she does to the doll that she made for the person, happens to that doll. So for these girls, let's go ahead and consider what a reversal would be. Um, a reversal for Nanako probably wouldn't be taking photos. I can imagine that a maximum output version would be like she would take a picture and then have like some kind of AI randomizer on her phone where you know like you can use AI or like put in an AI prompt and it just does it. It would be something like that where it would do some crazy edits or whatever, and whatever the edits are would happen instantly. That would be crazy. Or it would be like adding crazy distortion filters and stuff like that. Like big heads, little bodies, spirals, and stuff like that. That'd be cool. A domain expansion would probably be like a paparazzi. It would be a barrierless paparazzi where they're all surrounding you, taking pictures of you, but every single one of them has different edits, different things going on. Like maybe they like cut your head off, or they take like, you know, swap your hands with cat faces or something like that. It would be like getting stuck in Trafalgar Law's like room technique, where essentially anything can happen to you. It's just that instead of her doing it off of her phone, she's pretty much just like having the paparazzi taking pictures do whatever they want. And Mimiko's technique, um, a reversal for her technique, I can't really imagine what would be like the reverse of just fucking with voodoo dolls. Um, yeah, I can't imagine, but a domain expansion for that would definitely just be like just torturing the voodoo doll. Like, okay, like I imagine, um, like if she does, this is all I'm just making stuff up off the top of my head here, but she would put you in a domain expansion, and it would be like, let's say it's a barrier, like it has a barrier, sure, um, and then she could probably telepathically like manipulate the doll in the barrier, or different items would show up to do things like she would get hammers, nails, she would get knives, like candles and things like that, so she can just like torture you infinitely. It would be like getting stuck in a Tsukuyomi, but but you know, like it would prolong the time. Like you would probably feel like you've been in there forever, like for hours, as she's dismembering you, you know, beating you and stuff like that. But in reality, it hasn't been that long. So next is going to be Haruta. Miracles. Pretty much, he stores, pretty much like he stores plot armor or luck under his eyes, those little marks under his eyes. And every time something dangerous is going to happen to him, it somehow is altered by his miracles to go in his favor, rather. And I think he doesn't know about this, if I remember correctly. Let me see. Um, blah 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 blah. Oh, the miracles erase them from his memory. Everyday miracles. Blah, 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 blah. It stores little everyday miracles after erasing them from his memories. So yeah. Um, a reversal version would be like extending this luck to other people. Like if they're in danger and he doesn't want them to be like his partners, then it could go, one of his miracle marks could go away to defend somebody else instead of being a passive for just him. A maximum output version would be like reversing all the possible damage that could happen to him to his opponents. And I think that would be interesting because like he would probably still get hit, but much like Heat On, the damage would go to them instead, and it would be like the maximum power of like whatever they're doing. Nita. Nita's ability, which is also unnamed, pretty much just is like a stasis pain and wounds. So if instead of bleeding out, if like someone cuts your arm open, instead of bleeding out, he can put this like star pattern and slap it like you see him do with Yuji right there, and it essentially will stop the bleeding, stop the pain, and all that stuff. Um, I can't think of like a reversal version of this would be. The reversal of this would just be healing. Actually, no, the maximum output version would be healing, which is just a reverse curse technique, just healing his teammates and friends and stuff like that. Like positive curse energy. You know what I mean? I yeah, I really can't think of like what a reversal would be. Maybe like a stasis of everything but the damn. I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, we gave him a maximum output version. That's good enough. Not everybody needs a reversal. Anyway, Urame has ice formation, which is what it sounds like. You can produce low temperatures from their body in order to generate and manipulate large amounts of ice. The reverse of this would just be like I said, with water benders, how they can change the temperature. So now that the ice is produced, he can turn it into water for different purposes, or he can boil it and turn it into steam for hiding and stuff like that. Not maximum output. Well, maximum output would probably just be just larger ice formations, kind of like when Todoroki would create like giant fucking glaciers just to defeat people in a sparring match, or freezing the whole building for the sake of winning that test in the first season. Um, a domain expansion. I don't think Arame has one, but if let's say she does, then her domain expansion would be like it would be like ice climbers using their final smash, where it's just like a giant mountain like Everest, and you're just at the peak of it, freezing your ass off. It would probably be like Leonardo DiCaprio in that movie, was it Revenant, when he was stuck in like the ice tundra. Anyway, Ogi Zenin. Oh, we're getting into the Zenins. Haha. Okay, Ogi Zenin. His ability is called Blazing Courage, where pretty much he just puts um what is it? It's scorching flame. Holy crap. I thought it was just cursed energy. So it says coats his katana in a scorching flame and even imitates the blade's cutting ability. Pretty much, even if the sword is broken, the energy extends off the sword and can still cut and do damage and stuff like that. But it's hot as shit. It's scorching flame, apparently. Didn't know it was scorching flame. That's cool. A maximum output version of this would probably be like an Odachi, where it's just bigger, larger, probably even hotter than that, and then anything around it takes damage. Oh my god, the the domain expansion that this guy would have would literally just be Captain Yamamoto's Bunkai. It probably wouldn't have like the four different versions of it, like north, south, east, and west, but even just like the first ability where he swings it and then just tapping the sword. Hold on. No. Hold on. I need to show y'all. Like his sword touched the ground and it was, oh my god. What was it? Yamamoto. I cannot spell today. Yamamoto Bunkai. Yeah, so this first image is what I'm talking about. Um, yeah, it was just a little sleek little sword like this, and it was just smolders and stuff. But as soon as his sword touched the ground, it like basically gave this huge explosion of like flames and stuff like that. God, I wish there was like a GIF for it. Let's see, is there a GIF? Because this happened in the Thousand Year Blood War anime. I just don't want to pull up the scene because I'll likely get copyright claimed for it. Let's see if I visit the actual website. Nope, this is not what I wanted. This isn't what I wanted, but it looks cool enough to where like that's what I mean. Something like that. This is it. This is it right here. I found it. I found it. I found it. This is like what I mean. Like he would have swings like this where it touches the ground or it touches anyone and it's this much power. Like that's some crazy level of firepower. And because it says it still has like the cutting ability and stuff like that. So this is like what I imagined when I was thinking of like Ogi having a domain expansion. That's cool. Um I don't care for a reversal version. That's cool enough. Chojiro's technique, creating giant stone hands from the earth and manipulate them to clasp enemies. Oh yeah, I vaguely remember this guy. I think he got his throat snatched by Maki. To be fair, two different characters got their throat snatched by Maki. Um, hmm. I guess the reversal version of this would be like swallowing his enemies in the earth instead of just creating hands to crush them. Um, and a maximum output would just be like a giant hand coming from the sky, or like the giant hand coming from the ground up into the sky, and then like flipping and crushing them, something like that. I don't know. Ronta, his ability, it just paralyzes anybody he looks at. I imagine a maximum output version of this would create like a paralysis field around them that pressures them from like all angles. Uh, I can't imagine what a reversal would be. A reversal probably would like force them to move in a certain way, like basically forcing their body to move involuntarily. Maybe. Anyway, Jinichi's technique is pretty much as you see right here. It's like when Deku punched Overhaul, and it was like a shit ton of fist. Saitama does the same thing, consecutive normal punches. But maximum output is just this, but like more. Like probably from like tons of different directions, probably bigger fists and stuff like that that cover like grander distances. I imagine a reversal version um would be smaller fist. And the reason that like they would be smaller is so that they're faster, because the reason bullets, if you don't know this, why bullets puncture things is because they have very very small surface area on the front, but they move really really fast. So that small surface area does more damage the faster it is. And I'm sure you know that because if you've touched anything sharp, you know that it does less damage than if you stab something with something that's sharp. And that would be cool because instead of just hitting them and crushing them with blunt damage, it would literally be punching holes through people. So, Kirara's love rendezvous. I'm so glad we're going over this way because her and Hikari are two characters that I really want to talk about in depth. Like, I want to go into detail about their abilities because their abilities are wildly complicated. But this video is coming out today, like the same day I'm recording this is the day this video is going up, so that's cool. Um, so pretty much, her ability allows her to place 5 different symbols on her opponents or objects or herself or whatever, and the way they interact with each other is based on the order that these 5 stars are in. Well, the 5 symbols that represent the stars for a constellation. So if you have the same symbol, you're attracted to each other. If you have symbols that are not in the same order, like let's say this first one and this fourth one, they repel from each other, um, which is pretty interesting. She can use it in multiple different ways. They can use them in different ways. I'm gonna say she to respect Hikari. I don't want to. I'm not talking about it. I'm not gonna fight the LGBT community about this. I'm gonna just say she. Anyway, so in order to cancel her ability or turn it off, you essentially have to touch the constellation in order. Uh, but obviously, you would have to touch it in an order that you can touch it with your body, because you're not, you attract things with the same symbol, but you repel things with different ones. So you have to touch them in an order, the proper order that they're laid out so that you're not being repelled away. Anyway, and the order is right here: Emai, Acrux, Mimosa, Ginan or Ginan, and Gakrus or Gakru. Gakru or whatever. Anyway, like it says, marked with a crew, you must go through Mimosa and Ginan before reaching Gakrux, and then you would have to hit Emai, I believe. Anyway, you have to follow the sequence, and then things that are related have the same like symbol. So Megami, if he was, I think he was hit with Acrex, so all of his Shikigami are tagged with Acrex as well. So, to my knowledge, it's kind of complicated, but it's not that complicated if you know what her ability is based on. The reversal version of this would just be if she could apply them in reverse order, because like you would have to know the order of the stars in order to make it work anyway. But if she could reverse the order so that you'd have to go from the last to first, and then the only way that you would be able to know would be like, the abilities would have to be opposite. So for example, instead of repelling things of a different symbol, it would draw them together and, repel things with the same symbol. That would be an interesting reversal for that, because that would really throw like a linchpin into what people think the ability might be if she's using them back and forth. Mm. So Hanyu and Haba, very similar abilities. Hanyu can turn her hair into a plane and fly at her enemies, and Haba can turn his hair into helicopter propellers and fly at his enemies, or fly around pretty much. Um, I don't know if I could say there's a reversal for these, but I guess the closest would be like to use the jet turbine of the airplane, or reverse the spin of the propellers to like pull things towards you. Like use the turbines instead of flying yourself forward, or flying yourself up or forward or backwards or whatever the hell you're doing. Reverse it so that it's pulling your enemies. Probably the closest thing you can get. For the sake of hilarity, I think that Hanyu having a domain expansion or a maximum output version would be like 911, while Haba, his max output version or domain expansion would be like, turns into a helicopter and fucking Kobe Bryant's people that get caught in the domain. Anyway, next is Higuruma, the goat. Oh my god. I really wanted to do a video on just Higuruma. Like just in general, because he's such a cool character, but we'll fit him in here since we are talking about all the others. Mm. So, Higuruma, his he doesn't it's hard to really talk about him because like his ability really lies in his domain expansion and his curse tool. So curse tool, Shikigami, and domain all came by default with his technique. His primary ability is realized through domain expansion, which is what I was saying, which places him in a one-on-one court trial where he can prosecute his enemies by earning a guilty verdict from Judge Man. So essentially, Judge Man is the judge, and the reason Judge Man is his Shikigami is because he was basically so good at his job that he was recommended. It was recommended that he be a judge himself, and he said he didn't want to, pretty much because he just doesn't believe in the legal system. Pretty much, that's really just what it boils down to. He just doesn't believe the legal system works, and has like no faith in it. He had already lost his faith in it by then. But Judge Man is that representation of him if he were a judge. Anyway, so Judge Man automatically knows about every crime that the enemy has done and randomly selects one crime to convict them of. And Higuruma gets a manila folder with one piece of evidence to prosecute them with. And it's up to them to go back and forth in a, well, not back and forth, but to go from like defending and prosecuting to where the person defends themselves, saying, why they, if they plead innocent and why they plead innocent, or they can plead guilty and just take the consequences. And then Higuruma, if they plead innocent and he still to prosecute them, can then show off his evidence to damn them for being guilty. And then Judge Man decides if they're innocent or guilty, and the verdict or their punishment is based on the verdict. So if it's like something super simple, like when he fought Yuji in season 3, Yuji was said to have walked into a casino while under the age of, I think it was 18 or 21. Anyway, he was underage and he went to a casino, which is illegal. And but because that's not something that would sentence you with like jail time or the death penalty, excuse me, he just had his cursed energy stripped away, and he had to fight with imbalanced cursed energy, which is pretty much a death sentence for pretty much anybody in a one-on-one fight with someone as cracked in combat as Higuruma. I don't know why he's as good as he is, but he just is. Anyway, but they can also have something like a cursed tool taken away from them. Let's say he was fighting Miwa, and she was found guilty of whatever, whatever, then she would get her sword taken away from her. It would be her cursed tool. Her sword would get taken away from her because if I remember correctly, Judgment prioritizes cursed tools and then cursed energy, if I remember correctly. And it's because of how versatile cursed tools are. And then on top of that, if it's something super severe, even worse, like, you know, murder, mass murder, like when Yuji was accused of murdering thousands of people in Shibuya and he admitted to it because he felt guilty that Sukuna used his body to kill all those people, then Higuruma will get what is called I think it's called the Sword of Extermination. No, the Sword of Execution. This Blade of Extermination is Maharaga's. The Sword of Execution. And if this sword touches you at all, you die. It could literally tap your pinky toe and you will just straight up die, which I think is freaking cracked. Also, when his gavel is his personal curse tool, which he can make appear in his hand. He can make multiples appear, as we saw when he was throwing multiple gavels at Yuji. He can also change the shape and size of it by making the handle longer for a longer ranged attack, or making the head larger to hit a wider range, or a mix of the two, and it's really cool. Higuruma is genuinely one of my favorite characters in this franchise. Maybe we'll do a video where I rank all of the JJK characters, but for now, that's not what we're doing. Anyway, um, geez, there wouldn't really be like a reversal version. Maybe a retrial or an appeal probably would be like the reverse version, where like if he's in his domain and the person is found innocent, he could appeal and just like try them again maybe. um there wouldn't really be a maximum output version though that I can think of, because his technique really isn't suited for that. It's mostly domain based. Anyway, next is Reggie Star. Alejandro Saab, or Sayu, voices this character. Really cool, really cool. Um, anyway, Registar has contractual recreations, so he can manifest objects and services based on like contractual receipts. Pretty much any kind of paper that is like a genuine like legal agreement that this thing was given or exchanged or bought or sold or whatever to another person, between people, then he can manifest that thing. So, for example, if he was to get his hands on my Barnes and Noble's receipt, he would be able to produce a copy of Here to Slay in his hand, or excuse me, if he got my Dollar Tree receipt, he could manifest a honey bun and a Gatorade. If he was, but this also works like for healing. If he had a receipt from someone who had like a 5 day vacation in like a luxury suite getaway, his body would recover as if he just had come back from said trip, which is really interesting. Maximum output version would probably be like pushing the limits of it, where hilariously, I think it would depend on how crazy of a contract it is. So there was a conversation on the internet about what would happen if he got his hand on the treaty paper for the Louisiana Purchase, and they were like, yeah, essentially he would be able to burn it with his cursed energy and manifest like damn near 33% of the country and hit people with it. Like he could genuinely create a landmass like that because the Louisiana section was purchased. Like a huge part of the United States was bought. That would be really interesting. But then, like, I think it would depend on like what the receipt is essentially. Like, if he was to get his hands on like the Gettysburg Address, could he manifest like, like could he manifest two different sides, like two different armies, and then like, have them in a treaty? Could he have them like come to a truce? Could he create like rights essentially? That would be crazy. Um, So yeah, I don't know. I think a reversal version would be him just creating a contract on the fly with somebody else, like kind of like a binding vow. Instead of making a binding vow like with himself or saying what the binding vow is or whatever, it would actually be like storing binding vows pretty much, where he would have like paper, or like, he would have like a paper appear on his little receipt suit or whatever, where if he burns that paper, then that binding vow happens. I think that would be the reverse curse technique version, where he's creating his own receipts as binding vows for his technique. That would be really interesting. I came up with that on the fly. That is really cool. Anyway, hmm, Hazenoki. Hazenoki, I'm just gonna call it detonation. His curse technique allows him to detonate parts of his body, and then he also has reverse curse technique so he can heal those parts anyway. um Maximum output would probably just be like blowing up his whole body, and that would genuinely be like, that that would be crazy. That would be funny. He would be put in the same memes as like Rexplode and Gambit in X-Men 97, where they blow themselves up. That would be hilarious. I think that would be the craziest way. And that would work in JJK for sure, because when you risk your life, like put your life on the line for something, then it actually makes the attack stronger. So if he was to like detonate everything but like his like spinal column and his brain and nervous system, then he could explode at maximum power, and then even still use reverse curse technique, or like program his system to like automatically do RCT as soon as he explodes, so that he doesn't die, or he can just straight up die and make the explosion like nuclear warfare. Essentially, that would be cool. um Chizuru Hadi. Mm. I think this ability was called like Dark Claws or something like that. But essentially, he can just turn his fingers into claws. They say on his left hand. I'm pretty sure he can do it on both, but it doesn't matter because Megami killed him. Um, Maximum output would probably be like turning his whole body into like razor-like claws, or doing it to his hands and feet. Maybe making them like bigger and longer, like Lust from Full Metal Alchemist, being able to shoot them, extend them outwards as like kind of like piercing attacks. That'd be interesting. Remy. Remy's hair is pretty much just a scorpion tail, so she can sting people, wrap them up, and stuff like that. And um, I want to say maybe a maximum output version of this would be like poisoning people, because I don't think she can poison them. I think she's just stabbing them and it's like doing damage. But I feel like it would be interesting if she could stab them and actually like poison them and paralyze them, like how scorpions actually do. Or since it's a maximum technique, the poison would spread throughout their body and kill them. That'd be interesting. Um, Takaba. So I don't really know how. Anyway, we're going to talk about it. So Takuma's ability is the comedian, and pretty much anything he finds funny happens. It's manifested. He can pretty much conjure or create anything. He can use reverse curse technique to heal himself in certain ways, but it's all by pure accident. Uh, so pretty much as long as he's confident and finds whatever he's doing or whatever situation he's in to be funny, things will just happen in his favor. So that's cool. Um, I can't really say what a reverse curse technique would be. Maybe applying it to other people and like being like whatever they think is funny as well, which I don't think is a reverse. I don't think it's a reversal version. So, and there's a reason I say that, but you'll see in the next season of Jujutsu Kaisen, maybe, or even the season after that, whatever. Anyway, if you know, you know. Maybe a maximum output version would be like, the funnier it is, then like the stronger it is. That would probably be like a maximum output version. So like if other people are laughing at his jokes, or if he finds it to be like his magnum opus of jokes, then it would be like league stronger than if it was just like a one-off joke kind of. I imagine a domain expansion for him would just be like an actual comedy show. Like he would be on stage doing a comedy performance, and the enemy would unfortunately be the victim of slapstick humor. Hmm. Kurorushi, who my brother thinks is the fucking goat. Absolutely not. I will forever send this motherfucker pictures of cockroaches and be like, "Is this your goat?" Um, so Kuroshi, his bag is a little bit deeper than the description here. So pretty much he can just produce tons of cockroaches that pretty much just devour anything. Like he's actually infusing his cursed energy into roaches and they're like eating people and stuff like that. Pretty disgusting. He also has the life festering sword, or the festering life blade, I think it's called. And whenever he hits somebody with it or cuts them with it, roaches start growing under their skin to devour them, and it's really disgusting. On top of this, you can technically kill Kururushi, but if he undergoes what is known as parthenogenics, I think that's the name of it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the process of like roaches essentially making more roaches. Oh, excuse me. So pretty much like you killed his main body, but he already like duplicated himself into like another cockroach essentially, which is why he was able to come back in towards the end of the final episode for season three. Um, there's no real reversal technique that I can imagine for uh for him. Maybe like the bugs are like spitting up like disgusting acid on things, like the acid that their stomach acids that they use to like you know decay thing or destroy things, decompose it so that they can eat it easier. Maybe it'd be like that. They'd be spitting that up, but that's just part of like being a roach and eating stuff. Maybe Maxim. I don't even want to talk about this because Kurushi is roaches, and roaches are disgusting. I grew up in Los Angeles, not necessarily the best locations of Los Angeles, and yeah, roaches are freaking disgusting. The sooner I can get off this, the better. His domain expansion would be putting you in a LA apartment, and then every roach in the foundation runs out, letting the building crash on you. Then they crawl into the rubble and eat your body or whatever. I don't give a shit. Anyway, moving on. Udo Takako. Takako. Takako Uro. Jesus. Can I read? Um, her story is interesting. So pretty much, if you missed it, which I would not be surprised because damn near everything about her flashed on the screen for like half a second. So we know this that Yuta and Gojo are descendants of the Fujiwara and Sujiwara clan. And I think Gojo said he's a descendant of the Sujiwara, while Yuta is a descendant of the Sugiwara. Sorry, of the whatever. They're descendants of one or the other clan. Anyway, I think Yuta is the descendant of the Sugiwara. And Uro was basically an assassin for the Fujiwara clan. And she was basically framed and betrayed by someone that she cared about deeply, and she was executed, which is what she's upset about. And Yuta reminded her of the guy that betrayed her from the Fujiwara, and Yuta gets really confused about this, and he's like, maybe um, I thought I was, from the Sujiwara, but maybe I'm from the Fujiwara. I don't know. She probably knows more than me since she's back from those days. And um, essentially, the only thing I can think of is that maybe he's a descendant of both, and that both clans kind of like intermingled and created the Akotsu family. While the primary portion of their clan, like maybe the Sujiwara, stayed completely pure as far as their bloodline. Most of them, at least, stayed pure. So that pure part of their family tree ended up becoming the Gojo clan, while the diluted version of like the Fujiwara, sorry, the diluted version of the whatever, you know what I mean, of the Fujiwara and Sugiwara clans intermingling just became the Akotsu family. Maybe that's my headcanon. Anyway, her ability is sky manipulation, which for whatever reason is not labeled here, but it allows her to pretty much grab empty space and move it around to her will. And it, kind of just everything has to follow the physical distortions and changes that are made. So, like, if she basically grabs the air and like forces the ground and everything to like warp upwards, then all of the cars will start falling and sliding, buildings leaning and stuff like that. You get the point. Um, the reversal version. Oh, she also has a move called Thin Icebreaker where she like hits you and like the space around you just cracks and damages you. It's a cool looking technique, but it's really hard to explain. Um, I don't know what her domain is. Mm. Um, Going based on the very limited visual that we had, where we just saw like a bunch of like like blue flames leading a path. I want to assume that her sky manipulation makes it pretty much forces like her opponents to like move down this execution line, like walking down the flame paths leading up to their death and execution. And any way they try to like run away or go into a different direction, like the distortions kind of just make that path lead them towards the execution grounds, where at the very end they probably get their head cut off. I think that's fucking cool. Anyway, I cannot think of what a reversal of her technique would be. By the way, if I miss like a reversal or a maximum output or domain expansion and you have an idea, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Yeah, I cannot think of a reversal. Maximum technique would probably be like her grabbing two different sections, like to her left and her right, and like pulling them and twisting them in all kinds of ways, like pulling them together and then like twisting it, flipping it, or whatever. Thus, like this one motion that she's doing in her hand would be distorting everything around her, left, right, up, and down, and stuff like that. That would be kind of cool. Anyway, the GOAT, Ryu Ishigori, his curse technique is called Cursed Energy Discharge, which pretty much allows him to essentially charge, well, go figure, charge a shit ton of cursed energy and, well, discharge it in any direction. The anime actually gave him a little bit of a buff where he can make thinner beams, he can make larger beams, or he can make multiple volley beams that hone in on their enemies, which I think is freaking cool. Um, I want to assume that based on what we saw with him, his thing was like firework adjacent or like festival adjacent, which is I think falls in line with his desire to find a good dessert essentially, where he, the whole time he's like, oh, I just want a good dessert, I want to be full. I had a lot of good fights in my era, but I want that one really good fight, to make me full. And I think it plays on that because at festivals, like, yeah, there's fireworks and stuff like that, which could be reminiscent of like his cursed energy discharge. But um he that's also where like people get like sweet treats like caramel apples and like different treats and desserts and stuff like that. They get all that stuff like dango at festivals, so maybe it would create like a festival like setting, and the fireworks are literally his grenade blast, like his discharge, his cursed energy discharge. um and it will like fire up and explode in multiple like directions and stuff like fireworks. But as they burst outwards, they fly towards his enemies to like hit them. So you're pretty much getting bombarded with tons and tons of volleys of cursed energy, which I think is probably very accurate. Anyway, uh, the other goat, Yuta Okotu. His ability is copy. So I did a video on him and Rika not that long ago where I was wondering if Rika had her own cursed energy or her own cursed technique before fusing with Yuta. Well, I say fusing, but it's not really fusing. It's like she is his personal Shikigami. Anyway, um I think because she's an extension of him, because he obviously cursed her and now her body or her vengeful cursed spirit is attached to him. I think she's more of like an extension of him. So she's a storage unit essentially. And when she eats pieces of people's bodies, she copies their techniques, and those techniques are stored within her. And any additional cursed energy that Yuta uses or stores in the ring also goes to her. Any cursed objects or cursed items that cursed tools that Yuta wants her to hold on to, she stores in her as well, which we also saw in the finale of season 3. And in order to use these copy techniques, Yuta has to manifest Rika, and he can only manifest her for like 5 minutes. So he has 5 minutes of any curse technique that is copied to utilize. And his domain expansion is called Mutually Assured Love. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. And it basically lays the entire area around him inside his barrier with swords, and every sword has a different curse technique that he has copied, which I think is fucking raw. And in addition to this, he can also apply any of the innate techniques that he has copied to the barrier, making those techniques the sure hits, which again is fucking raw. That is cold. Oh, and also Rika can fight within this domain expansion. So again, fucking raw. Anyway, a reversal technique would be like if he can lend a technique that he has to somebody else, um, maybe, or like move a technique to a different person, kind of like let Rika grab, like, go from him to somebody else momentarily, allowing them to use an ability like that. That'd be pretty cool, I think. But I don't think that's really possible. Um, Anyway, next character is called Charles Bernard, and he has what is called G Warstaff. It's a giant spear that looks like a fountain pen. And essentially, if he cuts somebody, he can see their future, which is kind of cool. But I also think this ability is fucking stupid because you have a spear shaped like a fountain pen, and there was literally zero capitalization on that. I think this would have been cooler if he could write futures, like with the fountain pen, like in blood or ink, or even just brought like a cursed energy can just like form like infinite ink for the pen or whatever. And then like he could be fighting, swinging the spear or whatever, and his opponent would think, oh, he's just trying to stab me or cut me, but in reality, he's actually writing something. And like as the ink hits the wall or the ground, whatever he wrote is like a future that he can activate with his cursed energy. That would be so fucking cool. And I came up with that on the fly reading this because I barely remembered this character existed. Gege fumbled with Charles Bernard. He could have been such a cool character. But anyway, a reversal version would be like if he cut himself and he was able to see his own future, but futures aren't set in stone and he can alter it if it's something bad. That would be that version. Um, I don't know, a fucking maximum output version would probably be if he cuts them multiple times with like a crazy combo or something, that he can see more and more of their future as he cuts them. Like let's say he cuts them once and he can see a full minute into their future, but then like every time he cuts them it goes up like multiplicatively, where like it's like, oh, I catch you once, I see 1 minute. I catch you twice, I see 2 minutes. I catch you three times, not 3 minutes, 4 minutes, because now you're just multiplying by the last thing. And it's like doubling pretty much. That would be cool. And then 8 minutes, 16 minutes, 32, like the 64 palms kind of. That sense of counting. I think that would be cool as shit. I can't imagine what a domain expansion would be. You let me know. Maybe it'd be something similar to Unlimited Void, but instead of showing them like basically like infinite whatever the hell, there's a lot of speculation on how that on how that works, but we'll talk about it when we get to Gojo. Um we uh it would be like bombarding their mind with like their future, showing them every aspect of their future, kind of like in Naruto. Itachi, when he's killing the clan, in order to kill his girlfriend, he doesn't kill her like directly. He doesn't like stab her or cut her head off. He puts her in a Tsugoyomi that lets her experience an entire life with Itachi. Like they live their whole life together from that moment on, all the way through old age and die. And then she snaps out of the Tsukuyomi and realizes that it was all like essentially a genjutsu, and her body dies from exhaustion. I think something like that would be really cool. Like just bombarding their knowledge, like their mind with their own future, every single detail of it. And then like their mind and body can't keep up with it and they essentially die. I think that would be cool. Really, really cool. All right. And with Bernard completed, we get to talk about Kenji Hikari, whose ability, I have no idea how this works, by the way. Like it's just things happening. And to be honest, I'm just gonna go to Hikari and look up his curse technique because I was planning to do a video. Unfortunately, the end of this month has turned into a very busy one with work and interviews and voice acting and the convention that I went to, which I will probably end up talking about at some point because I did something there that I think was kind of fun. Anyway, we're gonna look at his, I guess, cursed energy. Um, so some people have a trait to their curse energy. For example, Kashimo. Kashimo has an electric trait to his cursed energy, which we'll get to him in a second. But pretty much because he has an electric ability, his electric cursed energy also like can electrify people and stun them and stuff like that. Hikari, his cursed energy has what is described as like a rough kind of edge, like sandpaper or kind of like a sharp cutting like ability. So it's kind of like serrated, which is very delinquent esque of him. If I really put my mind to it, I might be able to figure out how his curse technique works. But let's go ahead and read. He does have cursed energy reinforcement, which obviously would make him stronger and make him more durable, which is what most characters have. But his is pretty strong, where he can like send really heavy shit flying to where it looks like, oh shit, he's kind of just Yuji right now. So his innate technique is called Private Pure Love Train. It says it's a pachinko themed technique that is primarily applied through domain expansion. The curse technique imbued into the domain manifest Private Pure Love Train, a pachinko game. Is that really a game? A pachinko game inspired by the eponymously named romance manga series. Is this real? Hold on. There's hold on. There's no way. This is whatever. I didn't get the whole thing, but whatever. Um, there's no way this is real, right? Like it's just gonna pull up Jujutsu Kaisen, right? Um, Idle Death Gamble. That's the name of his domain expansion. Yeah. Okay. So okay, just had to make sure this wasn't like a real thing. I think it's just a manga series in JJK. Anyway, however, Hikari can summon the the visual effect indicators of the game, such as the shutter doors outside of his domain. What the actual fuck? Wait, so he can like manifest visual effects from a pachinko game that's based on a romance manga? But why a romance manga though? Um, That's weird. Anyway, it says mostly through his domain expansion. So let's look at his domain expansion. Idle Death Gamble, a pachinko themed, Jesus fucking Christ, a pachinko themed domain expansion that creates an environment resembling a train station that hosts a game of chance. Okay, Hikari's primary goal is to line up three of the same numbers. Okay, that's just a slot machine to hit a jackpot, which with only one out of 239 chances of doing so. Jesus fucking Christ. Okay, so if he hits a jackpot, I guess this is what happens. Unkillable mode. Hitting the jackpot of Idle Death Gamble grants Hikari a bonus of unlimited cursed energy for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, because that's the standard time for a hot streak, essentially. The exact duration of the Private Pure Love Train theme song, Admiring You. That. What the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing? Okay. Um, which plays throughout the round. Sure, whatever. The limitless cursed energy causes Hikari's body to reflexively use RCT to automatically heal any injury, making him temporarily unkillable after hitting a jackpot, unless his head gets cut off, because we all know that cursed energy and the commands from cursed energy, blah, 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 come from the brain. Anyway, my question is, why did this manifest when he was 5? Because, like, okay, if he has a personal connection with this romance series, and let's say this romance series is like related to his gambling addiction or whatever, and then he awakened a curse technique. Like, let's say he was an awakened sorcerer like Higuruma, where he's experiencing life in this crazy way, and then he gets awakened. Originally, that's what I thought. That's like when I was reading the manga, I thought that when I heard about Hikari before I even got to his chapter, I thought that he was an awakened sorcerer in this way, where like when Kenjaku did the idol transfiguration on all of Japan, that he was awakened in his colony and that his ability had something to do with him, which is how Higuruma awakened. But now that I know that he was a student of Jujutsu High and that he just normally got his ability, it's just that, his ability was crazy complicated and nonsensical, so he got kicked out the school and something stupid or whatever. Um, yeah, why did this awaken when he was 5 years old? This is dumb as shit for somebody who was 5 years old. He essentially got an ability that is 100% tied to a game that is tied to a romance novel that he likely never heard of when he was 5 years old. Isn't that so fucking weird? Like that I I genuinely feel like Gege would have done so much better if he made Hikari an awakened sorcerer. Just for that right there. Anyway, we're gonna move to Yuki. Oh wait, I don't fucking know. Maybe like a reversal would be detrimental to him because it would be like failing your your slot machines or failing at pachinko or something like that. Maybe like each failure has like an ability tied to it or like a debuff or something, or it like every time he fails it increases his chance of hitting big net. I don't fucking know, man. I'm so confused just looking at what his ability is. And it's not even that his ability's that complicated now that I'm looking at it. I mean, if you study pachinko, then it's complicated. But I mean, just in a general sense, it's not that complicated. It's just that the in-depth study of pachinko makes it complicated, and the chances of him hitting make it complicated. But it would just be easier if he was a reincarnated sorcerer. If he was an awakened sorcerer. Anyway, um, I don't give a shit what a maximum technique would look like. You figure that out yourself. Put it in the comments below if Akari's your goat or whatever. Anyway, Yuki Tsukumo, Star Rage, basically adds Virtual Master herself or Garuda, her Shikigami. So pretty much she's like, what was her name? Miss All Wednesday? Not Miss All Wednesday. Um, what was her name? Because Miss Wednesday was Vivi. Sunday was Robin. I don't remember her name, but that one girl that had, I think it was the Kilo fruit in One Piece, where she was able to just make herself heavier, and she was like crushing Usopp or whatever. Anyway, it's like that. She can just make herself heavier, and it also works for her Shikigami as well to control mass. And I think her domain expansion is like a black hole or some crazy shit. The reverse of this would obviously be making things lighter, like Uraraka's quirk in My Hero Academia. A maximum output version would be making herself so heavy to the point where she's approaching like critical mass. But anyway, yeah, that's cool or whatever. Um, Kaori Itadori or Kinjaku, the man who received backshots for the future of his plan. Anti-gravity system. It counters gravitational forces to some degree. Basically, it's like I said with Uraraka's ability. It's his ability is damn near the opposite of Yuki's, by the way. Like, I mean, because essentially when you're making things lighter to the point where they can like start floating because now they're like less dense than air or whatever, then you are counteracting gravitational forces. um and then the reverse of this would be, adding gravity, I guess. So that would be the reversal version. Maximum output would just be being lighter than air and floating, or you can maximum output the reverse where it's like heavy pressure on them, like Brago from Zatch Bell, which is a deep cut. But if you know, you know. And if you don't know, go watch Zatch Bell. It's dead ass. No, seriously, go watch Zatch Bell or read the manga. There is a continuation manga that picked up from the original manga. Go read it. Anyway, I domain expansion would probably be watching Interstellar on loop or something. I don't fucking know. Jesus Christ. I'm sorry, my brain was fried just off of reading Hikari's nonsense. Let's get back into it with Angel. I do have a video on Angel because we talked about positive cursed energy. Technique extinguishment, basically, she produces um, positive cursed energy and can, dispel curses, barriers, techniques, and all sorts of stuff, and incarnated sorcerers and all that shit. A reversal would just be regular cursed energy. It would be launching shit tons of regular cursed energy. Maximum output is literally maximum output Jacob's ladder. And uh, if she had a domain expansion, it would probably be something similar to when Yuta uses his and uses her ability. Slight spoiler, where Jacob's ladder is it hits no matter what. It's the guaranteed hit factor. She'd probably also like summon a choir of like angels depicted in her domain or whatever, and there would be Jacob ladders coming from all kinds of directions and stuff. Anyway, Utahime. I think I talked about her ability in a video before. Not this, before the VTuber stuff. I made a video where I was talking about abilities and how to make them better, like I did with Momo's. So we're just gonna rehash that stuff here. Hers is called Solo Forbidden Area, and essentially she can just do a dance that buffs people, and it basically puts their output up to 120% as if they were to hit a black flash. It's pretty much just like a ritual dance with incantations and hand signs and such. Um, it'd be cool if she partnered with people like Miguel and Gaku Ganji, which we will talk about at some point. For slight spoilers, and I think a maximum output version of this would just be like a grander scale dance or whatever, or even like a more elongated version where like the longer she does it, the stronger it gets. But it just buffs teammates. That's really all it does. It buffs teammates' curse energy output, which is more dangerous with the more powerful people that she's with. Um, a domain expansion for her would probably be just this, but on like a gianter scale, where like it probably pushes beyond 120%, where like the dance and all that stuff is innate, so it's already happening, and then she can activate it again so that it just stacks on top of each other, and that would be buffing the person that she's with, whoever is inside of her domain, one of her teammates, while her opponent would probably be getting their cursed energy siphoned or something like that. Or her cursed energy can just be so overpowering that it like holds them down to where they can't even expel their own cursed energy. Um, yeah, and then the reverse version would be, like I said, draining people's energy, draining people's cursed energy. So, Kashimo, whose ability really isn't that complicated, but they kind of make it feel complicated sometimes. So, Kashimo has Mythical Beast Amber. Um, well, this is actually the more powerful version of his technique, but we're going to just go look at his regular technique so we can see how interesting of a character he really is. So, as we said before, his ability is electricity. He creates electricity, and his aura or his cursed energy just has an electric component to it, which you see here. It can shock people if there's a touch. So physically touching him is off the table, unless you can just heal, like Hakari, who you see is fighting him in this image. He also has an electric discharge where he can pretty much like one tap people or like instantly hit them because of positive and negative charges and blah 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 blah, and then the speed of electricity and all that shit. Mythical Beast Amber basically reconstructs his body into electricity, so he becomes pure energy, which is what Electro has been trying to do since like becoming Electro. And this essentially will kill him, unfortunately, but it makes him the most powerful and strongest he has ever been, with him being able to like utilize sound and electricity and stuff like that, like well beyond human potential. I can't imagine. Maybe a reverse curse technique would be he would like if he grabs you, he can put so much electricity into your body that he can overpower your curse energy and basically reverse mythical beast Amber, turning his opponent into pure energy. And then he could probably absorb said energy, which would be crazy. He could literally like consume people. That would be kind of cool. I think that'd be sick. Um, Maybe a domain expansion would just constantly be flowing like electricity throughout the entire domain, stunning his opponents, and that would allow him to bounce back and forth from all angles, kind of like Crystal Ice Mirrors or Pikachu's Final Smash, where he would just be bouncing back and forth, attacking his opponents from all angles at the speed of lightning, which is wickedly fast. It's actually the speed limit, the speed cap on any character in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe until we get to the Modulo manga, which I will not likely be talking about today. Um, Larui or Larue, Larue. I don't know how his name's pronounced because I don't remember where he's from. But Larue has heart catch. So basically, he creates a giant floating hand that can grab enemies, crush them, and slam them into objects. To make this stronger, I would say it would be better if he had could use two hands instead of just his right hand to be a right hand and a left hand, and then he could attach a binding vow to his ability where if he's only utilizing one hand, that hand is invisible. Um, would probably do like less damage, or it would probably be like a smaller hand or something like that. But the fact that it's invisible would make it a lot cooler to utilize, and most people would notice that that's his ability because they would be seeing him utilizing the two giant floating hands. Anyway, um, can't think of what a reversal for this would be necessarily, but if he was to have a maximum output, it would probably just turn into like a giant fist or something to crush his opponents in, or one hand would grab them, like lift them super high, and then kind of like primary lotus them down, but instead of slamming them to the ground, like the other hand meets them halfway to smash them between. Um, Yeah, and I think that would pretty much be it. I can't imagine what a domain expansion for this would be. I can't imagine he would even be able to have one. But Miguel, the guy that I said would be cool if he teamed up with Utahime, Prayer Song pretty much just enhances his physical abilities by dancing to a beat in his body. Like, if you ever have a song stuck in your head, just imagine Miguel has like Espresso by Sabrina Carpenter stuck in his head and he just starts boogieing to that song. Like he's just gonna stay on beat and his physical abilities are just now amped, which would be even cooler if he had Utahime singing and dancing and doing her thing, because then that's like 120% plus the amp that he's adding to his body, which would be pretty cool. Um, a reversal for this, yeah, genuinely can't imagine. Maybe the music comes out and like people can hear the music or whatever. Because Utahime's said that like it produces music. Gaku Ganji can produce music with his ability. So like maybe it'd be something like that where his body just like pushes the music outwards. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe that'd be a maximum version, like a maximum technique version, where the music comes out and then like his opponents are at the whim of his music, or that could be like a domain expansion actually, where the music um, comes from the domain and it's like playing nonstop there, and his enemies have to like stay on beat in order to fight with him. Kind of like how projection sorcery works, but instead of working on 24 frames per movement, they have to move, sorry, 24 frames per second, they would have to move to the beat of the song. Otherwise, like, I don't know, like they would get frozen or something, some kind of something would happen. They'd slip or trip or something. Anyway, Rina Mai. Amai's technique. Oh yeah, I remember this guy because his ability is stupid. There are some characters from Modulo put on here, and I'm genuinely surprised. Actually, is this last? These last three are all Modulo characters. It won't be spoiler, I guess, if you haven't read the manga or if you are, not kept up. Speaking of, Modulo might be getting an anime. They released an anime trailer for the final for volume 3 of Modulo that got released, and it's really good. Anyway, if you want to go look at that, go right ahead. I will probably forget to leave the link in the description, but just go ahead and look it up. Modulo, Modulo, animation trailer. Anyway, um, this guy, it says his technique allows him to amplify his sugar level and transform the excess sugar into a physical form, such as pudding. He can also infuse others with the sugar. Performing this technique causes him to experience hypoglycemia, which is extreme lack of sugar in your body. Um, Really stupid ass ability. I cannot imagine this being good. The reverse would just be absorbing sugars into your body. Maximum technique would be like creating wedding cakes instead of like a cup of pudding. And yeah, I can't even imagine what a domain for this guy would be. Anyway, actually, probably taking it would probably drain the sugars constantly from people, or like in the domain. Like if he catches you in it, your body just automatically starts like losing sugars, and you experience hypoglycemia, and then the sugars are either put into him or turned into like little sweet treats around the area. That'd be kind of cool. Um, Osada's seance technique allows him to summon and use the ability of whatever he wears, which is really good for cosplayers. If you're a cosplayer, you want this ability. Imagine I cosplay Genu from K-pop Demon Hunters, and I have all the abilities of Genu. Like I can fly, I can teleport. Like I literally have like all of their demon abilities. That'd be so cool. Or like I dress up as Spider-Man, and now I have like web shooters, and I have like his like super strength. I can stick to walls. His spider sense. Oh my god, that would be so cool. The possibilities would be endless. I would just like, that's so cool. Anyway, whatever. Moving on. Masaki Takeda. Oh wait, sorry. Reverse curse technique. Can't really think of what a reversal for this would be. Maybe he could um imbue the clothes with that technique so that he can just wear them later and then use it instead of using his thing. And then the more cursed energy he puts into them, they become their own cursed objects with abilities tied to them. That'd be kind of cool. So then anybody who wears them has those powers. That's kind of sick. Um, Maximum technique, I think it would just depend on who he's cosplaying. So like if you it would be like transforming into them essentially, not just having their abilities. But let's say like I wear an Optimus Prime costume and I use the ability instead of just having the powers of Optimus Prime, I would turn into a fucking transformer. Like I would become an Optimus Prime copy kind of. That'd be cool. Um Domain expansion, can't really think of what that would be. Anyway, um yeah, Takeda's ability, which is called Marmalade Boy. Really? That's the name of his ability? That is so dumb. Anyway, it summons a Shikigami wielding a needle and spool of thread that can transform the appearance of anything by sewing human skin onto it. This motherfucker needs a horror movie yesterday. Um, anyway, Jeez, that's creepy. Reverse curse technique would probably be taking skin off of somebody, which is horrifying in its own right. And I don't even want to think of what a maximum output would be. That's disgusting, disturbing. Domain expansion would probably be even worse. Anyway, we're moving on to inherited techniques, which are abilities that are passed down through clans. The Zenin technique of the 10 shadows. This one I want to talk about because we had a character previously that had a really cool ability. Um, who was it? It was Ino Takeda. Yeah, the auspicious beast that Ino has, auspicious beast summons, where he was able to um, take abilities and properties of certain creatures and apply it to his own body. This is cool. So anyway, the 10 shadows lets you summon 10 different Shikigami. Obviously, you have to defeat them in combat. You get the dogs at as soon as the ability awakens, and you have to basically make a summoning contract or ritual of sorts with other Shikigami and defeat them. So like the toads, escape rabbit, and the bull, not the bull, yeah, the bull. I think it's called charging bull. The tiger, all that stuff. Maharaga. You get the point. And when you defeat them, they're under your subjugation, where they can pretty much you summon them, they do what you want. Now, there's a character in Modulo. I'm not going to talk about the character too much, but this character has the 10 shadows, and they are able to, instead of summoning the individual characters, they are operate much like the Auspicious Beast, which I think is cool because I think this might have been an idea that came from Eno's Auspicious Beast, but they can manifest parts of the summonings to their body and utilize it. So they can summon like the demon dog's claws onto their hands and fight like that, or they could get like Nue's wings and fly around, which I think is really sick. Um, the reversal is probably just the times that he puts things in his shadow or he himself goes into his shadow. I think that's probably the only reverse. Um, I don't think there will be a maximum output version of anything, any of these abilities. Probably just Maharaga. Maharaga will be the maximum output. Oh, actually, no, fusing them together because Megami can fuse his Shikigami. So like when like the frogs have like wings or whatever, or um, later we will see fusions of the Ten Shadow characters in like the next season or the movie after that if they do a movie after season 3 part 2 or season 4 whatever you want to call it. Anyway, the Limitless. We're gonna talk about the Limitless and the Six Eyes because they are both things that you can get from being part of the Gojo clan. So the Gojo family has the Limitless, which allows them to pretty much control infinity, um, which is crazy. Pretty much just manipulating and distorting space, as it says here in the final sentence, um, allowing you to push, pull anything. Ugh, sorry, I'm yawning. So you can pretty much push and pull anything. Pulling it is laps with blue. Pushing is reversal with red. As far as maximum output, I consider that to be hollow purple. There's a scene that's coming up in the future where slight spoilers, but not really. But Utahime and Gaku Ganji use their abilities in tandem to increase the output of Gojo's hollow purple, and then Gojo also says the incantation and does the hand signs for hollow purple, so it makes it even that much stronger. I think it comes out to be like a full like 200% power of a regular hollow purple, and he uses that, which I think is freaking sick. Anyway, um, maximum output would probably just be like extremely like more concussive force for red, or for blue, it'll probably be reminiscent of a black hole, which is similar to like Yuki's domain expansion, which I think is cool. Also, by the way, I think this is the one domain that Gojo can't be defeated by, for obvious reasons. I mean, it is a domain expansion, but wouldn't it just be crazy if Gojo used his domain expansion and just like instead of making infinity the innate technique that is in the domain, he instead applies like reversal red because you can switch the ability that's in your domain with something else. So like hers will be like a black hole infinitely like sucking it, and then he would essentially make an infinite concussive force pushing outwards. And if placed properly, like overlapping her domain, then essentially he could just like stabilize her domain instead of a black hole. It would cancel out with its infinite push, and then they would just be throwing hands. And I'm pretty sure Gojo would win that fight. Anyway, yeah, he has everything for this. Like he already has a domain, a reversal, potentially a maximum output, all that shit, even an imaginary technique and all that. So anyway, the Kamo clan has blood manipulation, which allows the user to pretty much manipulate their blood in any way possible, and it becomes poison to anybody that they're fighting, so they can put their blood inside of that person's body and kill them from the inside out, or they can just utilize their blood for crazier techniques like convergence or this little spinny shuriken thingy thing that Norotoshi's doing here. Obviously, Choso is just way better than this with this because he has an infinite supply of blood as he is a cursed womb. Uh, anyway, a reversal for this would be like probably take like I said with Eso and Kechizu. In fact, everything I said for Eso and Kechizu applies here because it's the same shit. It's blood manipulation. Cursed speech. Uh, Basically, when they have these tattoos, these snake fang tattoos or whatever on their mouth, or later in Modulo, it's on the back of someone's hand, and he has to put his hand over his mouth to give his commands, then anything they say or command you to do will happen, but the severity of what they're saying and also the durability of who or what they say it to will directly determine how much damage or recoil that they take back, um, based on all of those factors. Reversal for this would be like if he could command himself, essentially, like if you could tell yourself heal and then your body just forces you to use RCT. That would be kind of interesting. um Maybe a maximum output. It would just depend on what you say. Like, for example, I think like saying like explode, which is a command he does in the movie, I think would be considered a maximum output. Or when Yuta just says die, that would be like a maximum output. Um, yeah, yeah. Honestly, a cool idea that I had for a domain expansion would be like if it would be like if it'll be it'll be a closed, obviously a closed domain with tons of speakers everywhere, or tons of like different things like speaker softwares or whatever, and they would all be you giving commands, but every speaker or megaphone or mic or whatever says a different command. So like, let's say there's like 10 speakers, they could say like get twisted, explode, fly away, come here, spin around, do a backflip. They could say like, I don't know, like hit the Dougie, just a bunch of different things. They could say like front flip. I already said backflip, so front flip, side kick, shadow boxing or whatever. And then all of those things you have to try to do at the same time, and it would literally like be tearing your body apart. Anyway, the final curse technique is projection sorcery, which is a technique of the Zenin clan. And this technique allows a user to map out 24 frames of movement over the next second, and they then have to abide by those 24 movements. And obviously, they cannot be breaking physics with these movements. It has to be something that they can possibly do. And while they're using their technique, whoever they're fighting has to also do 24 movements. Otherwise, they get slapped into this little freeze frame that you see Dagon in Naobito's hand, and then they get a free hit to do any damage. What's crazy is like when Naoya was fighting Choso and Maki, people were saying that like his punches were doing zero damage, or that it was just like one damage per hit. Y'all clearly don't understand how fighting works, because like Naoya is moving like 24 frames per second. And let's say each frame is a punch to like your rib cage. You're telling me that if this guy punches you in the rib cage so fast that he hits you 24 times in a single second, that you're taking no damage from that? That's actually insane. Like, that's literal copium. I'm actually a projection sorcery defender on this one. He's like, you're moving. Like, I don't know off the top of my head how fast that exactly is, but some people, humans can barely survive, can barely take getting hit in the ribs with a regular punch at regular speed. Y'all can barely get hit in the liver without passing out. Professional boxers like collapse when they get hit in like the liver one too many times. Or like if somebody punches you in like the middle of your chest, like your sternum, done. If somebody chops you in the neck or hits you in the temple, regular speed, you're cooked. You're telling me that if this guy at the speed of 24 frames per second hits you in the ribs, your liver, your neck, like in your jugular, in your sternum, in the back of your head, the sides of your head, and keeps slamming your ribs, 20 like with punches that fast, that you're gonna just be like, oh yeah, I took no damage. Like, y'all are actually dumb. Anyway, um, a reverse for this is probably the best case scenario, is like applying it to your opponent with the 24 frames. A maximum output is actually pretty much what we see now you do, where when he's fighting Maki, what he does is he uses the 24 frames per second to map out his run so that he's running faster now because 24 frames, literally running at 24 frames per second the way he does is much faster than running at regular speed. And then he takes that new speed because when he comes out of the that 24 frames, he's still keeping the momentum and like power behind all of it so that he activates his power again so that he gets an additional boost at an additional 24 frames and then another time and another time. So he's basically stacking his speed and power on top of itself by spamming his technique over and over. That is probably the closest he can get to like a maximum technique. I don't want to go over domain expansion because we will see domain expansion for projection sorcery. And yeah, is that it? Non-inherited techniques. Yeah, there's non-inherited techniques and external techniques. Sorry, extension techniques. Like Straw Doll has, what was it called? Resonance, which is an extension of her technique. The Ember stuff, the Ember insects, Reversal Red. Oh yeah, this is it. The Wells Unknown Abyss, where you can fuse your Shikigami and stuff like that. Nanami's collapsibility. Yeah, these are all extension techniques, and most of them are freaking Mechamaru's. But anyway, yeah, that's just the different abilities you can do with it. That's not really like, yeah. Anyway, I didn't talk about the Six Eyes by accident. I completely forgot about that because I started talking about Gojo versus Yuki Tsukumo. Um, yeah, but the Six Eyes pretty much just lets him see cursed energy different from. Whoop, let me not go down to those. That was modulo spoilers. The Six Eyes lets him just see cursed energy at a like more fundamental level, and like he can understand it better. He can see much farther and stuff like that. It allows him to be far more accurate, utilize less cursed energy per ability, things like that. It's pretty cool. Um, yeah, so I believe that is pretty much all. And if we're done with that, I can introduce you guys to the surprise that I have here, the bonus content, if you will. So I have been working on something. I've actually been addicted to a game. And because of said addiction, I have found out that this game I've been playing, it's a really popular gotcha game. This gotcha game has such an in-depth story, crazy lore, all sorts of stuff going on with this game. And I have decided that this is the next hyperfixation that I'm going to go ahead and yap about for a month straight. So, all of May, we will be talking about this particular game and the different aspects of said game. Not every video in May, but the majority of the videos in May, because there's a lot to go over with this really cool gotcha game. And um, yeah, just you know what? I'm gonna let you know what the game is because I made an avatar in the style of this game, and I think it came out really cool. So let me know what you guys think. All right. Wabam! This is what I have been working on. I have gotten extremely addicted to Cookie Run Kingdom, and as you can clearly see, I went ahead onto the official Cookie Run Kingdom site and created my own little cookie. This is Hero Cookie. So I have officially converted myself into a cookie for the sake of talking about Cookie Run Kingdom lore. So over this month, we will be talking about all the fun assets and stuff that have to do with this franchise. And I think it's going to be really fun because, like I said, we talk about all things here, all different worlds, characters, and giving out the mark of a true hero to whoever. And as a matter of fact, since we do that, we will be going over who I think deserves the mark of a true hero. As far as like the characters that I already know about, like I've played a lot of the story and I've gotten a decent amount of the characters, but as we talk about it, some characters are gonna get it and some characters won't. And no surprise to anybody, but Ginger Brave obviously gets he gets himself a mark of a true hero as well as the unnamed cookie before him, who I think would be a Ginger Snap or probably a Snickerdoodle. I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna leave the Cookie Run Kingdom watermark on my avatar, by the way, my little PNG here, just because I love this game so much. And like, Yeah, they have an official site where you can make your own cookie. I'd say go ahead and try it out for yourself if you like this game at all. If you don't really care for it, I promise you the lore of this game is so deep and so good. It's really going to be captivating. But anyway, that's all for me. This is like a 2 hour video, like where we just talked about pretty much just Jujutsu Kaisen and curse techniques. There's like 60 different curse techniques in this game. So I mean, in this franchise. So to go over 60 different curse techniques, inherited and non-inherited or innate techniques, and then even giving my own idea of what a reversal and maximum technique and even what a domain expansion would be. I think that's very interesting, and the fact that we did that, cool dedication. Anyway, yeah, that's gonna be all for me, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.